Okay, so welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. And today we're going to be talking about something that seems really simple on the surface, but it gets really, really deep. And that is self-awareness.
Yeah.
Now, you're listening to this. You are someone who is interested in new ideas and exploring all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
So you might be thinking to yourself,
right,
self-awareness. I got that. Like, I know myself.
Of course. It's natural to think that way.
But given all the articles and the notes and just all the different stuff that you sent over, the question we're really going to explore here today is, do you really know yourself? Like, do you know yourself well enough to actually unlock genuine growth and change?
Right. Like, it's one thing to know, your favorite color or what kind of music you like.
Yeah. But
it's another thing to know the mechanisms underlying your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors.
Yes. And that's what we're going to try and do today.
Yeah.
So when we say self-awareness, what are we actually talking about?
Well, stripped down, it's the ability to observe your own thoughts, your own emotions, your own behaviors.
Okay.
And then connect the reasons for those observations to what's actually happening.
So it's like having this internal radar.
Exactly.
It is.
Or a mirror, inside your mind constantly, scanning your inner landscape.
Just scanning everything.
Yeah, but it's not just about detecting what's there.
Okay.
It's about interpreting the signals.
Right.
Understanding where they come from and what they mean.
Okay, so instead of just reacting to everything, on autopilot, this idea of self-awareness gives you this pause.
Yes, it allows you to step back and reflect.
Okay.
Instead of just instantly react.
So can start to see.
Exactly.
Okay, maybe there's this pattern.
Yeah.
Of, when this happens. I always seem to react in the same way.
Yeah, you start to recognize those recurring patterns. You start to identify your triggers, the things that set you off, the particular situations, or maybe even the words that tend to lead to those heightened emotional responses.
Okay. Yes.
And then you gain insight into what truly motivates you. What really makes you afraid, what ignites your passion and your creativity.
It's like figuring out what makes me tick.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And
while this might all sound very abstract, it's actually the foundation for any meaningful personal development.
Yeah.
As many of your sources highlighted, without this clear understanding of your inner operating system, any attempts at growth or change can be really superficial or even misdirected.
Yeah, they could just completely backfire.
Exactly.
So why is this so important? Why is it so important to have this internal radar? Why should you, listening to this, really care about developing this self-awareness?
Well, one of the most important areas where it has a huge impact is decision-making.
Okay.
When you have the strong sense of self-awareness, rooted in a deep understanding of your values, your strengths, even your limitations.
You're much better equipped to make choices that truly align with your authentic needs and aspirations.
Okay, so it's about being intentional with those choices that we make. Whether it's choosing a career, that lights you up, or choosing a partner, that you can really thrive with.
Yeah.
Or even just setting goals that you're actually excited to work towards.
Right. And this is actually something that one of your articles highlighted specifically. The importance of aligning your career choices with your values.
With your values, But what happens when we don't have this?
Right. Well, as we touched on earlier, when you lack that self-awareness, you might find yourself living more reactively.
Oh, so I'm just kind of
bouncing around?
Yeah, influenced by external pressures. Chasing goals that may look good on paper.
Okay.
But don't actually bring you genuine satisfaction.
Right.
You might end up feeling lost or adrift.
Like I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing, but I still don't feel fulfilled.
And you might not even understand why.
Yeah.
And this was actually a theme that I noticed come up a few times in your notes.
Right. Yeah. And it's that feeling of like, I should be happy.
Yeah.
I have all these things.
You check all the boxes, but you still feel this emptiness.
Yeah. And then when you start to cultivate this self-awareness, it's like things start to become clear.
Exactly. You start to gain clarity.
Right.
In the midst of all that confusion.
Yeah. And I can start making choices that actually are aligned with my true self.
Right. Choices that feel authentic.
Yes. And I can stop, constantly comparing myself to others.
Yeah. You can detach from that urge to compare.
Because I know what my own values are.
Right, because you have a stronger sense of your own internal compass.
Yes. And that feels empowering.
It is empowering.
Like I'm in control now, not other people.
It really shifts your position.
Yeah.
From passively experiencing life to actively shaping it, guided by your own understanding and your own values.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge. And this is a point that I think was really powerfully illustrated in some of the material that you sent over.
Yeah. This reminds me of an analogy that I read that really spoke to this. And it's this idea of someone who spends years climbing a ladder.
Okay.
They're working so hard. They're, really putting in the effort, achieving, milestone after milestone. And they finally get to the top, right? They've reached the top of the ladder. They look around and they realize, oh no, the ladder was leaning against the wrong building.
Oh, wow. That's a powerful image.
And what's so insightful about that is that they put in so much effort.
Right. They demonstrated commitment, perseverance. They likely achieved a form of success.
Word success.
But without that initial self-reflection about their true desires and values.
Right.
All that hard work led them to a destination that wasn't truly fulfilling.
Yeah, they were busy. They were probably seen as successful.
They might have even convinced themselves that they were happy.
Right. But deep down, it just wasn't right.
It wasn't aligned with their true selves.
Yes. And that's the thing. For you, the listener, you could be really active. You can be really outwardly successful. But if you don't have that self-awareness, you can still completely miss the mark.
Yeah. And end up feeling empty or unfulfilled.
And it comes to
Yeah.
your own purpose and your own well-being.
Precisely.
Self-awareness, in essence, ensures that your ladder, to continue that metaphor, is firmly rooted against the structure. That represents your authentic aspirations, aligning your efforts with what truly matters to you.
Yes.
And this idea was actually discussed in some of the readings on personal fulfillment that you shared.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about why this is important. But the question now is, how do we do it?
Right. How do we cultivate self-awareness?
Like, what are some things that we can actually do starting today?
Well, there are several practical strategies that you can incorporate into your routine.
Okay.
One foundational method is the practice of intentional self-questioning.
Okay, so I'm asking myself questions. Exactly. Take a few moments each day for genuine introspection.
Okay. And what kind of questions should I be asking?
You can prompt yourself with some specific inquiries, like how am I truly feeling at this moment?
Okay.
And go beyond just fine or okay.
Okay.
Really delve into those nuances. Another question could be, why did I respond to that situation the way I did? What were the underlying emotions or beliefs that fueled that reaction? And perhaps most importantly, ask yourself, what do I truly need right now?
Wow.
Is it rest? Is it connection? Is it a change of pace?
Yeah. So just taking these little moments to check in throughout the day. That's a great starting point.
It is.
Another one that I've heard a lot about, and that, a lot of personal development resources.
Really
keeping a journal.
Yes. It might seem simple, but consistently writing down your thoughts and feelings can reveal surprising patterns and insights over time. What's really interesting about journaling is that it creates a degree of separation between you and your thoughts. By putting them down on paper, you can then look at them more objectively. So when you review your entries over weeks or months, you might start to notice recurring themes.
Okay.
You might identify what consistently energizes you.
Right.
And equally importantly, what consistently drains your energy and motivation.
So I can actually see...
It's like creating a roadmap of your inner world.
Of my inner world, yeah. Another one, and this one I think is probably a little bit harder.
It can be challenging.
Is getting feedback from other people.
It requires vulnerability, but the insights can be invaluable.
Okay, so how would I go about doing this?
Consider asking someone whose opinion you truly value.
Okay.
A direct question like, what's one area where you think I could improve in how I communicate or interact with others?
So it's really specific.
Yes, and be open to their perspective. It can shed light on blind spots. You might not be aware of yourself.
Yeah, and it's not always easy.
It's not always comfortable to hear constructive criticism.
To hear those things.
But it can be a really powerful catalyst for growth.
Okay, yeah.
And this actually aligns with principles often found in discussions about interpersonal effectiveness.
It's like I'm getting a different angle.
Exactly.
On how I'm interacting with the world. Now, for something a little bit more internal, we can talk about mindfulness.
Yes.
Or meditation. Now, I know a lot of people, when they hear meditation, they think, oh, I've got to like sit for an hour and like empty my mind.
You don't need lengthy sessions.
Yeah.
Even short periods of focused attention can be really beneficial.
Right.
Just focus on your breath, on the present moment. And that can enhance your inner clarity.
So I don't have to do it for a long time?
Not at all. You can start with just 5 minutes a day.
5 minutes. Okay.
And simply observe your thoughts and feelings as they arise without judgment.
Just notice them.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that can gradually cultivate a deeper sense of self-awareness and presence.
Okay. And finally, if you are someone who likes more structure, more like a framework, there are tons of personality and strengths.
Yes, there are a variety of assessments.
Oh, this.
Things like the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, which explores different personality preferences. The Enneagram, which delves into core motivations and fears. Or StrengthsFinder, which identifies your dominant talents.
Oh, okay.
All of these can provide a valuable lens through which to understand yourself better.
So they're not like a label.
Right, and they're not definitive, but they can offer helpful frameworks and language for understanding your typical patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving.
So it helps me make sense of things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you may have even come across some of these tools in your own research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This all makes me think about a time in my own life.
Yeah.
Where I was, pursuing these goals that I thought I should be pursuing. Certain professional goals.
Okay.
I wanted to have this job title. I wanted to get these accolades.
Right. It's interesting how often there can be a discrepancy between external validation and internal satisfaction.
Yeah.
Societal expectations or the desire for approval from others can sometimes overshadow our own desires, leading us down paths that don't truly resonate.
And this is something that comes up a lot in conversations about career satisfaction.
It does, and the alignment in your career and your personal values.
Yes, and for me, what that led to was this feeling of being totally drained.
Okay.
And I was confused because I was achieving these milestones, but I still wasn't feeling fulfilled.
Right.
And there was just this like disconnect between, who I was acting like and who I actually was.
Yes, that lack of alignment between your actions and your authentic self.
And the thing that really helped me was making a conscious decision to slow down and start asking myself those deeper questions.
That's often the turning point, that deliberate shift from seeking external validation to aligning with your internal values. That's where true self-discovery often begins.
So I started asking myself questions like, what do I really value in my work and in my life, regardless of what other people think?
Regardless of any external recognition.
And what actually brings me joy, what gives me energy.
What about your intrinsic rewards?
Yes. And what I realized is that self-awareness is more than just knowing yourself intellectually.
It goes beyond just the facts about who you are.
It's about honoring and acting in accordance with your authentic self.
That's a critical distinction. True self-awareness leads not only to insight, but to acceptance, and ultimately to living a life that is truly congruent with your inner truth and values.
Even if those choices seem unconventional to other people.
Yes, even if they don't make sense to the outside world.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you feel like you're just starting to scratch the surface of this idea of self-awareness, that's okay.
That's perfectly fine. In fact, recognizing that is a huge step forward. What's important to remember, and this is something highlighted in many of your sources, self-awareness isn't a destination. It's a journey.
Okay.
It's a continuous practice. It's a habit that you cultivate. And ultimately, it becomes an integrated way of living.
So it's not like I'm going to arrive at some point.
No. And then I'm self-aware.
It's something I'm constantly working on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so what's like a good first step?
Well, a great first step is to simply ask yourself one of those honest questions that we talked about earlier.
How am I feeling? What do I need?
Yeah.
Why did I react that way?
And approach the process with curiosity and kindness towards yourself rather than judgment or criticism.
So don't beat yourself up if you don't have all the answers.
Yeah, because the more you commit to understanding your own inner workings, the better equipped you'll be to make choices that genuinely serve you, to build more meaningful and fulfilling relationships, and to cultivate a deeper and more sustainable sense of satisfaction in your life.
That's what we all want. And a lot of your sources really emphasize these points.
They did.
So, really knowing yourself, informed by all the incredible research and stuff that you sent over, is that first step.
It's the foundation, but it's absolutely essential on the path to becoming the best version of yourself.
It all starts there.
It does. So with that in mind, I'll leave you with a question.
Okay.
What's one small, specific action you can take today, inspired by our conversation and your own research, to deepen your own self-understanding?
That's something to think about.
It is. Carry it with you beyond this deep dive.